their groups, and then we'll talk about next steps and action items. So to give you an overview of the specific plan, the plan provides a vision of the downtown area over the next 20 years. It's going to guide and incentivize new investment, development, and improvements. It'll help establish new zoning regulations, including permitted uses, building heights, setbacks, and site design. It also discussed changes to land use, circulation, and other aspects of the built environment where desired. It also prioritized capital improvements in the specific plan area, such as infrastructure. Design standards will be included to ensure that quality architecture, landscape, and site design is addressed. We'll also look at funding and financing strategies as a part of this plan for public improvements, and also streamline the approval process for new development. So here's the timeline that we have for the project. We're currently in this third box here in the middle. We started the process back in the fall of 2021, where we did our existing conditions analysis, looked at some of the previous efforts that had happened with planning for the downtown area, including looking at the general plan, the zoning code, and other plans that affect the specific plan area. We had, in the next box, is our listening and visioning box, and that really was the time frame when we were looking at getting public input. We had our first community meeting online back in January or February, and also had our community workshop in May that we were looking to get your input and kind of understand what you think the vision of this area should be over the next 15 to 20 years. So now we're in the plan alternative stage. We've gotten a lot of great public input. We're developing a few concept plan alternatives we've been looking at and kind of modifying. Tonight we'll be showing you our draft concept plan, kind of the plan that we're coming up with as of late, and looking at providing some ideas on what can happen in the specific plan area in these different districts that you'll see on these maps in a moment. We're going to be leading into that fourth box, policy and plan development, here shortly after this community meeting tonight, to really look at the vision and goals, set the policies for the specific plan area, and developing development standards and design guidelines that will go into the specific plan document. So we'll be quickly working on the specific plan here and getting a draft going over the next several months through the end of the year. And then the last box is adoption of the specific plan and the associated EIR, and looking to do that next spring, probably late spring of 2023. So in terms of public outreach, we've had a site set up. I'm sure many of you have heard about this site, this MyMixer San Dimas specific plan site, where we've had a lot of great input that people have been able to do at their leisure from home on their computers or smartphones, taking surveys, looking at ideas that they have and presenting that to the public on that website. Also, there's a map on there, an interactive map tool that people have been pinning ideas, such as where they think improvements should happen on certain properties, or where some improvements can happen for mobility, like better crosswalks, sidewalks, things like that. So we also have had, again, 2 community meetings. The first community meeting was held virtually on February 23rd, and that was a project introduction and overview of the specific plan, and we talked about issues facing the community, just like a big picture kind of discussion of what the city should be in the future and what are some of the issues that are facing the city today in the downtown area. The second community meeting was held in person on May 11th, and input on where land use activities and other things should be located in the future were discussed at that meeting, and we had about 60 people attending. So for the next few minutes, we're going to talk about what was discussed at community meeting number 2, and Jennifer will take it from here.
All right, thanks. So I just wanted to recap a little bit about kind of the main takeaways from the last meeting. Just to highlight, we did have image preference boards where people had the opportunity with red or green stickers to put green stickers on examples of building types or open space programming or street character in use for possible examples that they gravitated toward, and then the ones that they were not as pleased with, they could put red stickers. And that gave us some valuable feedback just at a moment's notice, a moment's glance of to what the community felt was maybe more appropriate for San Dimas. And we looked both at residential building types in kind of the historic town core area that you might think of Bonita, between say Cataract and San Dimas or Walnut, and then also on the gateways, because you'll see from the plan areas that it's a pretty linear geography there. So we're going all the way to the 57 freeway, all the way east of Walnut there. And it was an interactive exercise, and it allowed us to gather valuable feedback from the community on preferences. We also had breakout group tables where we covered a few different topics. And I'm just going to recap the highlights. There was a lot of great feedback provided. There is a notes document available on the city's website that has kind of a comprehensive list of notes gathered from each of those tables. But just to give a quick recap, we talked about land use and building form, and we facilitated conversation by asking questions about should certain areas stay the same, or should new uses or improvements be considered? What scale and heights of buildings should there be, and what other ideas were there for changes. And again, just recapping some of the main points, we heard that preservation of the small town feel was important to the community, that people wanted to have uses added in downtown that will bring people in and be a gathering spot, have businesses that stay open in the evenings, and incentivize new restaurants and retail. We heard some comments about protecting the packing house for redevelopment. And we also heard generally that multi-story or higher density type projects would be acceptable as long as the scale and mass and building form and siting are appropriate. We had heard that people did not want to see buildings right at the street. They wanted setbacks and step backs, and they wanted landscape to soften them, and that they were generally okay with those kind of on the western gateway or toward the 57 freeway, but definitely wanted to protect the town core was the overarching theme. The next area we talked about was open space. So what types of new public spaces or open spaces should be considered, and what type of programming should occur. And we heard that people wanted to see outdoor uses and outdoor plazas incorporated, wanted to have active public spaces, wanted to have improved streetscape experience and more shade trees, better and more abundant street furniture, adding public art into projects, adding outdoor lighting, and perhaps an entry feature into the downtown area. And then we also talked about mobility as our final topic. How can circulation for cars, bicycles, pedestrians, and buses be improved in the plan area? And asking the community if they had ideas for streetscape improvements along specific streets. And I'll kind of cover a few topics. So we heard a lot of comments about parking, concerns that new development would exacerbate parking issues in downtown. We heard a lot of great different suggestions on how to address parking, be it from densifying the park and ride station or adding a structure there, adding more public parking in other sites, adding new parking structures on the city yard, incorporating underground parking into projects. And we also heard that parking structures should be adequate but not massive. We specifically heard some comments about some other parking structures further down west on the Gold Line that would not be desired by the community. We also heard comments about bike lanes, and there was various ideas. Different tables had different suggestions, that they should be on Bonita, that they should not be routed through on Bonita, and they should be periphery to the downtown. We'll talk more about mobility options later, but we did hear a lot of great ideas and suggestions. We also heard about walkability and traffic safety. heard quite a bit about that, downtown is walkable, there's wide sidewalks, but traffic calming is still needed, especially on Bonita. We also heard comments about Gladstone, Allen, and Arrow, and that anticipated demand will be higher and more users with the Gold Line and with new development in the area. We heard comments wanting additional safety measures and crossing improvements, and kind of addressing those improvements but still not slowing down vehicular traffic at the same time. And lastly, we talked about, we heard concerns about public safety, specifically transit-related issues with the station coming online, concerns about public safety. Some ideas included maybe having some more patrol there and better lighting. And so that just recaps a very main points from that last meeting. Again, there's a document on the city's website that has more detailed notes, but just wanted to give a recap of what we heard at the last meeting. Turn it back over to Nick.
So now we're going to talk about the draft land use concept plan that we've developed. And this map, which we're going to go over in more detail also during the breakout group activities, but just want to let you know that we did look at breaking this area up into 6 different districts, land use districts. And these boundaries generally follow parcel lines and right-of-way of streets. And the land use districts would become the new zoning classifications for the specific plan area once adopted. So the plan area, just to give you some bit of a idea of what we're looking at here, this area here we're identifying as Gateway Village West, and this goes to Cataract generally and the tracks. This is the historic town core now. We're calling this town core here in this area. This area here is the Transit Village district, which would be adjacent to the station and include uses that would really benefit from the transit station and amenities to service that area. Then we're looking here at the blue area near the eastern edge of the specific plan area, which is the Gateway East District, which we'll go over in just a moment, some of the details of that. And then in yellow is basically your public and semi-public uses that are in the city today, that are your City Hall. And then we have an open space category as well, which is for parks and recreational spaces here in green. So the Gateway Village West is an area where we'd like to create activity and vibrancy to the area just close by to the 57 freeway, extending east over to the railroad tracks, Cataract Avenue. And we'd be looking at mixed-use style buildings and design for any new development that occurs, which could be horizontally done, where uses are kind of next to each other, but they may not be in the same building vertically, or they can also happen vertically as well at some locations. Commercial and open space amenities in new residential developments would be required as a part of this area. We also have uses that we've identified for this area, which we'll talk about more in a few moments: entertainment, retail, restaurant, personal services, office, hotel, and residential. And looking at 2 to 3 stories along street frontages, really close to the street, and then maximum of 5 stories when it's located further from the street, and use of step backs on buildings such as this one here that you see. Here we're showing the Gateway Village East District. So this is a transitional zone from downtown to civic uses with undeveloped land and utilized sites today. This has a variety of uses that could be accommodated, such as residential, commercial, retail, and office, as well as personal services. I'm looking at 2 to 3 stories along street frontages, and a maximum of 4 stories when set back from the street. The Transit Village District, here you see a picture of Grove Station. This is a special zone for station adjacent properties and blocks. to build upon the success of existing Grove Station project with mixed use and townhomes. And new developments would be encouraged to incorporate similar site design, building form and design aspects as you see here with with the Grove Station project. And we're looking at 2 to 3 stories along street frontages, and then looking at maximum of 4 stories with setback from the street and interior in the properties. So this would include ground floor pedestrian-oriented uses along street frontages like Bonita, like San Dimas Avenue, including retail, restaurants, entertainment, other types of uses. And when the ground floor is not on street frontages, in upper floors we can have uses such as the ones above, and then you can also include residential, office, and medical in that area. For the town core district, this is a district that has your historic buildings today, traditional historic downtown segment of the specific plan area. New development and redevelopment of buildings are required to retain and reflect the historic feel and scale of the buildings today, and looking at buildings to be generally 2 to 3 stories in height. And looking at ground floor pedestrian-oriented uses on street frontages, again, like retail, restaurants, bars, personal services, entertainment, and other uses. And then we could have residential and office medical office uses above. In terms of the public and semi-public uses, we are looking at uses for the growth and general welfare of the city. So uses like you see here, like city hall, fire station, government offices, sheriff station. These are the types of uses that would be included and identified on the land use map as public and semi-public uses. And looking at generally 1 to 2 stories in height for these buildings and maximum of 3 stories in this land use district. And then for the open space category, the last one, this designates sites to promote open space and preserve natural resources for outdoor recreation and education, looking at sites that are active and passive parks, outdoor plaza space. This would be a district where no residential would be permitted. It's just for park space, active space, and any supporting or accessory structures would be dependent on their use and utility. This exhibit is showing some of the connections that we're looking at in improving and making better. Some of the streets that we have highlighted in the green color are primary streetscapes where we could see improvements to the pedestrian realm, wider sidewalks, more street trees, things of that nature. Along arrow that we're showing kind of those blue dots would be more of like a secondary streetscape treatment. So there might be added street trees and things, amenities added, but it wouldn't be as prominent as you would see along the more major streets like San Dimas Avenue and Bonita Avenue. And then we're also showing on here gateway treatments that could be, this is kind of a primary gateway when leading into the area along Bonita. Here we have these other ones identified. It'll be easier to see on the maps when we go through our exercise later, which would have streetscape improvements, have like monument signs, things of that nature to help introduce that you're coming into the specific plan area in the downtown area. So here's a couple pictures kind of at the top showing some of the gateway treatments that could occur with gateway signage, monument signage perhaps. Just ideas. These are just some images to give you some thoughts about what could be happening at some of these major intersections. And then the bottom pictures are showing what could happen more at like secondary gateway entrances with smaller monument signs and some landscaping and sidewalk improvements. And then here we're showing some treatments to streetscapes, whether it's adding planting strips with more trees, wider sidewalks, how we might incorporate bike lanes in the area, how we can include some better landscaping and xeriscaping and things like that nature. So now I'm going to turn over to Christina to talk about mobility options. And there you go.
Okay, so as Jennifer kind of alluded to already during the discussion, mobility feedback that we've received so far. What we've heard in previous meetings and just from the community is that in general there's a desire to make the downtown more pedestrian friendly, encourage more activity, but we also need to address the anticipated increase in vehicular traffic with the new station. And so with the station in mind, we also want to make sure that we're making it easier for people to access transit without the need of a car, so just kind of better increasing connectivity in the area. And so in these slides, I'm just going to present a few of the mobility options and strategies related to mobility in the downtown specific plan. So this is just kind of a general overview that we'll discuss more and get your feedback on during the breakout sessions. This first one here, traffic calming, the aim of this is really to reduce traffic speeds and improve safety for non-motorists. Thank you. And so one example here is curb extensions or bulb outs in some of the gateway areas that you saw in the last couple of slides. So this slows traffic, also has the added benefit of placemaking. There's an example there on the left, which is kind of towards the western end of the downtown area. We can also use things like turn islands and on secondary street connections, and then also some landscape medians, things like raised crosswalks or intersections to make those a little bit more visible and safer. The next one is pedestrian improvement. So this is really just aiming to enhance the pedestrian experience and improve first and last mile connectivity. So that connection between your home or work to transit or just the downtown area in general. We want to do things like increase the number of high visibility crosswalks. Here's an example here on Bonita. Enhance crosswalk safety by incorporating some treatments like leading pedestrian intervals or flashing beacons, adding pedestrian scaled lighting as well along kind of the sidewalks and pathways, and adding things like shade and street furniture, and making sure we have ADA compliant sidewalk ramps throughout. For bicycle improvements, the aim here is, we heard that some general interest in improving bicycle infrastructure, but kind of making sure that maybe it's outside of the downtown core. And so we have some options here. This is really just to kind of improve the infrastructure for bicycle travel, and the bullet points here that you have here are actually some improvements that have already been proposed through the first and last mile plan for the station that was done by Metro a while back. And so you can kind of see here some class 2 buffered bike lanes along Bonita in certain areas just outside of the downtown, a class 1 bike path on the south side of the train tracks, bicycle boulevard treatments on secondary streetscape connections where traffic volumes are a little bit slower. And then also potentially incorporating bike share stations or kiosks at the station or near the station where there would be people who would maybe have interest in using that. And so there's a few examples of different sorts of bikeways on the screen here. We can talk about that a little bit more as well during the breakout session. Next is intersection improvements. So this is just improving intersections for all modes. One sort of treatment being bicycle-friendly intersections at primary intersections, such as Bonita and San Dimas. This is just kind of increasing the visibility of bicyclists. And then also improving wayfinding and placemaking by incorporating signage, potentially at gateways and primary intersections as well. And then for parking, the main thing that we want to focus on here is just making sure that parking is aligning with the land use plan that was just presented, and we want to make sure that we're integrating parking into the design form of the project based on best practices, similar cities, previous studies, and making sure that we're making this kind of right size for San Dimas. And then also another thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is minimizing the visibility of parking and obstruction of pedestrian movement. And so we can do this by screening or wrapping parking facilities with more active uses, and also separating driveways from primary pedestrian access points and pathways so that there isn't any kind of obstruction, again, to pedestrian improvement. Is that added?
Okay, so thank you for listening to our presentation to give you some context of where we've been through the process of drafting the specific plan, the community outreach efforts, and then the plan that we're showing tonight. We're gonna take about 45 minutes to review the land use concept plan and that linkages plan we showed and get your feedback and comments. We're gonna take about, again, 45 minutes, and then when we done with our groups, we're gonna have each group present 3 to 4 big ideas that you discussed and want to share with the entire committee meeting. And so we'll go around each of the tables like we did in the last community workshop, and we'll give you about 3 minutes per group to talk about your ideas, and we can hear a lot of great thoughts. So we're gonna go ahead and go to our tables now. Well, you're already at your tables, but some of us that are not there will show up, and we'll get started. So thank you.